ready on my side. Yeah.
Decimal points?
No. Okay, hang on.
It's so predictable, Stephen.
Well, it's also unnecessary. Why
Okay, then don't do it.
Well, I mean. Okay.
Ready to start?
Kind of. I'm just gonna have a sip of this golden liquid. How are you
It
guys?
makes everything better.
Yeah.
You drinking honey?
Well, kinda. It looks like honey.
That's disgusting. You get diabetes.
One day.
You gotta watch out for that diabetes.
Alright, shall we?
We shall.
No need to count ourselves in. We'll just do it.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Did I get it right?
Perfect. So, welcome everyone to Book 15. Week 15 or Book 15? Book 15 of Sci-Fi on Ice. Our short science fiction books club where we talk about a book. And this week we are talking about Robert A. Heinlein's By His Bootstraps, which is a story about time travel. What did I say? Time travel, and I don't know, a few philosophical ideas, which I thought sort of overwhelmed this story. But yeah, it's a story about time travel, which for its time, I guess, was quite an interesting topic to tackle. And yeah, so it's about our friend Bob Wilson, and he's writing his thesis, and he's met by himself from the not too distant future, and then he meets more versions of himself.
It's 30,000 years in the future. What are you talking about?
Well,
it's very different.
But it's the 5 o'clock shadow. It makes it seem like he hasn't.
3 day.
Yeah, 3 day shadow. But so yeah, this is a story about the creating a loop of time travel. You know, going to the future and then coming back to see yourself, and then so on and so forth. And I think it really tackles the idea of free will in using the mechanism of time travel in the plot. So, what do you guys think of this story?
Well, generally, let's say, I went through peaks and troughs with the story. At first, not so keen, and I was kind of like, oh, why'd you choose this? Ugh. Because that first book, like the first half, is quite tedious, and and he kind of annoyed me because he's obviously like an alcoholic, horny man. Because he's like, stay for a drink? Oh, okay then. And then he's so obsessed with Arma that he's like, oh, you know what? Maybe I will go back. And we're like, send them to go see her, or whatever it was. So I'm like, I don't like this person. But then, yeah, it culminates in an ending that is interesting as a thought process. And I like, as you said, kind of the theological points he raises as to what is free will and like what is the ego, like who is Bob Wilson, because I mean there's like 4 of them. So yeah, it's interesting. It's, I don't know, I don't think told in the best of ways because it seems very convoluted, and he could have raised points I think more succinctly or with less baggage, but yeah, it's all right.
All right.
To summarize, it's all right.
It's all right. Okay, Dean, what do you reckon?
Man, it was not a great read. The part of actually reading it. I think it's for me personally, the story is better when you're not reading it.
Right.
So the actual story of it, if someone was telling you or you're watching it, you'd probably enjoy it more than reading it. Just because there's a lot happening at the same time. You've got 3 different conversations occurring at the same time, and as the reader, it's not set out in a way that you know who is talking at which time. So I mean, you've got to be concentrating the whole time. I found myself like just glancing through a paragraph, going, "Yeah, okay, it's still them talking. Carry on." And then putting the book down and coming back to it a couple of days later and looking at where I've left it, and then going, "What the hell have I read? Like, I had no idea." And then I find myself having to like scan back and kind of catch up again. And it's only after you've read it where you see the story as a whole, and then it plays out a little bit differently in your own head. So for me, as a read, not great. As a story, I don't mind it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the formatting. Yeah, I really struggled with that but I don't think it's necessarily the author's intention. It could have been where it was copied and pasted from. But the formatting was quite frustrating in that new people were talking, and it would be right after each other, or the same person was talking, but they got a new paragraph. And I was like, wait, oh no, this is the same person. Why do they have separate speech marks? Huh? So, yeah, I had to reread little bits every so often.
Well, I disagree. I thought this book was fantastic. I love this book. I love this story so much. And I mean, there's no exposition in this story. There's no explaining it. Only through, I guess, the protagonist. And okay, wait a minute. I do love this story, and I've definitely got problems with the story, and I'll talk about that, I guess, a bit later. But I I just absolutely loved how the whole time while I was reading this, that there were all these clues, whether it's foreshadowing, or whether you're predicting the ending, and I'm thinking, well, wait, I kept second guessing myself, how it was going to end up, and even though at one stage you think, oh, Dictator, the old man in the future, who you sort of at the beginning you think this is somebody else, and even though all the clues start pointing towards him, but you're just never sure that it is him until all the pieces align. And so, as a story, this I love that for the payoff for how it was set up. I definitely can understand how I think how Heinlein sets it up with the loop, how he sets up the loop, because it's a bit tedious, right? There's like the first 20 pages of the 40-page short story is setting up the loop, right? The Trinity, the three younger Bob Wilsons, and the one Dictator, the old Bob Wilson, we find out is the old man. Yeah, so you at first, yeah, there's a guy he refers to himself as Joe, who ends just to differentiate Bob Wilson from himself. So you think there's 3 characters at the beginning, but it ends up, and I think Sarah, you mentioned to me before, like the Trinity, and I like that as a descriptor of the 3 young Joes representing the different aspects of the self. With the ego and the what do you call it, the lack of free will and free will. I guess those are the other 2, of which I think I'll discuss in detail later. But yeah, that's my take. I love this story. But yeah, there were definitely some problems with it, which I'm keen to talk about. So, where
Yeah,
do you guys
I
want to
agree.
start?
the payoff and like the final loop, like how it starts, because it has already started, because that's time travel. But I like how it kind of makes sense to the protagonist and then to us, kind of like, well, he's had a great 10 years being dictator and he wants that for himself, right? And only by having that can he has to then create this loop so that he has this existence. So it's kind of like, okay, I get that. It's kind of all paid off and now we have a conclusion. It makes sense. He ties up the loose ends. But yeah, that first half was tedious. Like, it was just, that's what I mean. I feel like he could have cut some fat and
Yep.
like, and I get it. He's there like, oh, I want to say something different to break the loop, and then he doesn't realize that he's saying exactly what he heard before until he says it, which I just found frustrating, because it's like, if you want to say a nursery rhyme to break the loop, fucking say it.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Yeah.
And like, I don't know, it was very frustrating. And yeah, I mean, I think also because like him as a protagonist, like he is this bachelor that's messing around Genevieve, his girlfriend, slash fiance, and he does that for fun after he breaks up with her because he's gone back in time. So he ends up setting her up in higher hopes of, oh, he's gonna marry me, to then a few hours later be told, you're ridiculous, get out of my life. But it's the same person, because it's Bob Wilson number 4 who goes back in time to do that anyway. And I just think, you're an ass. And he drinks. Like, anytime there was a drink, he's like, yeah, sure, I'll have a drink. Oh, and there's a drink? Okay, I'll stay and have a drink. And then he's obsessed with Amr, or whatever, the Amra. And then...
Armor, yeah.
Like, yeah. And he was like, and that's, I think, what, Bob Wilson number 3, was it? Or was it number 2?
The Joe.
Yeah, it was number 2.
With the black
who
eye.
comes back and he's like, no, I want him to go through, which is why he helped fight Bob Wilson number 3 to let number 1 go in, because he's like, oh, you've got to see this, hot piece of ass, basically. And it's just like, I don't really like this person. I don't like this man. And then when he becomes dictator, and it's like, oh, they don't have the drive to this will, this competition. Oh, but I have that, so I can become their supreme ruler. I'm like, I don't know. I think there should have been more justification, and I guess it is a product of its time as well, in that the author didn't see the need for that kind of justification, as he brought in like the postal system, or he brought in fashion, that it changes season by season, like, so that men would try and fulfill the women's wishes more. That's not how fashion works, honey. Fashion is about women trying to please men and look appropriate. I was like, no, there's not enough justification here for you to suddenly assume that you know best. Just because you've read a few books and you've not finished university. Like, no, I didn't like it. So that really added to the fact that it was a struggle to read.
Well, I like that you brought up the he was not a likable character, because on one hand, I think you're trying, as we read, we're trying to like this guy and we're trying to like him and find out how he's going to break out of this loop, and I wanted him to finish his thesis. I was like, come on, like the title of this book is By His Bootstraps, and that he would find a way to persevere with something and make something of himself and be the hero and redeem himself. Yeah.
Do you know the original meaning of that phrase, though? To pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
I thought it was sort of like be independent, and rather than rely on other people rather than dependent, isn't it?
No, it was originally, before that, to mean something impossible. Because you can't pull yourself up, right? You're forcing down, it's gravity. It originally meant something impossible.
Okay.
And I think that's more appropriate for this, because it seems like an impossible loop.
Well, thanks for yeah, no, that's cool. I didn't know that. And it, Yeah.
Noted on QI, I think.
Yeah, it's a good show, isn't it? But one thing I wanted to say about the unlikable our unlikable. See, and I'm going to be careful calling him a protagonist because he's also the antagonist. Is that he's now, oh, what's the term called? He's an unreliable uh
Witness.
narrator because
Mm.
you know, like whenever the narrator like announces that they have like an illness or a drinking problem, then they're unreliable, and so actually, so there's sort of lies come through, or sort of, you know, the weakness of the character really comes through, and so this is, I think, speaks to the point about him being unlikable, because you just sort of think, well, you know, it's not as if he fixed his drinking problem, and it's not as if he fixed any of his own problems. He just created his own, um, how do you say, his own hell, I would say, even though it did sort of resolve. I think is normally, you know, in the story, your protagonist is, or the hero, you know, they've got some kind of flaw, but they sacrifice something about themselves in order to achieve. So, like, say, like in this story, he would have to kill himself to finish the loop, right? Which would be the noble thing to do in order to stop the madness of this playing with this time portal thing.
Mm.
And so, in the end, this, yeah, we're satisfied with the conclusion of the story, and you know, obviously, to not do what he did and to not be Bob Wilson, he's a bad guy. But I like the story because of that. Yeah. All right. So, what about some interesting points, like, or events in the story? What about the actual? What about the what were the aliens called again? The high
The Forsaken Ones.
No, they're the humans, right? What are the
Oh,
high? Yeah, they're the humans in the future, right? That have become like monkeys, basically, or just primitive. But oh, what are the high?
docile.
Yeah, but what are the high? The alien people who come and they bring the time machine, right? Like, it's not a human invention. This time machine. Um, what are they? Dean, have you got it?
What the
The, what are the people called? The aliens. What are they called?
high ones?
The high ones. Thank you. Yeah. So they they bring this time machine, which is this, what would you call it? A tetrahedral with spheres, and you three of them can change space. Yeah, the three dimensions of space, and the fourth sphere is time. And so you adjust three of them, and you can make a portal to go to a position in a space and a position in time. The white one is time. That's right. And yeah, this, like, the fact that it was an alien invention. What did you guys think of that? Not, you know, it wasn't us that invented time travel.
I think
Well, I don't think
it's
it ever would be.
yeah, it's like it's the most logical thing for such an illogical or outrageous thing, I should say, not illogical.
Hmm.
Because yeah, humans aren't going to invent time travel.
Cool.
Because if we would invent it, we would have just given it to ourselves in the past.
Yeah, we would have abused the hell out of it.
Because I mean, usually when one's talking about time travel, you can't interact with yourself.
Okay, so to the point of that, so we haven't like seen any evidence of people in the future coming back and like visiting us, right? So the fact that that hasn't happened, it means, well, it doesn't exist, right? And is that about cause and effect? You know, the idea that something happens now and then that creates the future, like in regards, sort of
Well,
like
I mean, it's what do they call it? Butterfly effect.
yeah.
Anything you do now, as an outsider, influences the flow of time.
Well, so that brings us back to free will, right? Because if you don't have free will, then time is linear, right? Like like it would be the white sphere in the time machine. It would just be, because remember, like he can't do the nursery rhyme, even though he's thinking all I've got to do is the nursery rhyme, and I'll break the loop, but he can't do it, right? And so we're now it's not a proof, but we're shown that the events just leads him to do what was going to happen anyway, and so he sort of plays with that in the story. Or he shows us why, even though you want to break it, or you may not because of the situation. And so, do you, do you have any thoughts on free will and cause and effect?
Yeah, but there is no free will in the story. It starts and ends in the exact same room, and nothing's happened in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but I mean, but do you believe it? Is what I'm saying.
I think free will is something we tell ourselves to sleep better at night.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, I think we have free will to a degree, but it's a social construct, just like the barriers that keep us from, utilizing our free will. There are constructs and there are barriers, and so it's within a certain frame. But I believe people have the ability to choose something of their own free will, to act in a certain way.
What about if you can discover something new or learn something? Is that an act of free will, or will you?
As opposed to,
Okay, if you go to a shop and you have a choice of strawberry and orange, right? So, and you, as Dean said, like you tell yourself that you have free will, that you choose one over the other, that makes you feel better when you sleep at night. But in fact, even though you choose or you tell yourself that you're choosing one flavor or the other, you actually don't have free will, and it's I don't have the answer to it, but that's the idea that they posit. Right, but if you learn something new, or no, if you learn something that nobody else knows, then this is sort of like you're tearing, what is it, the like a wormhole into knowledge, and so you are actually an agent of your own will. And
so like the idea that, say, you went to this place, you had the choice of strawberry or orange or whatever
yeah,
choice you just said. And so you're saying either you have free will and you're like, I feel like strawberry today.
Yep.
Or you're saying that all our choices are pre-written and we're just following a script that we're not aware of.
yeah,
Yeah, I believe the former. Yeah.
I mean,
We
yeah,
have the option to choose, but it's based on society and the expectations of those around us. And I say that thinking, it is Pride Month, to be topical. And if you consider the option people have now to live authentically, to be honest to others, is not the same choice, the same ability they had 50 or 100 years ago. So they have more choice now to be who they are and how they live. So that's why I say it's a social construct.
well, that kind of plays into the third option, that it's sort of both, that you have your own preferences is not the right word, but you have your own sort of how do you say, tendency. You have your own tendency that you're going to go one way. But if everyone is saying strawberry is really cool, then you'd be like, oh, yeah, I like orange, but actually everyone's saying strawberry is really cool, so today I'll get the strawberries. So like that might push you on that day, right? So is that it could be like a third option where it's not one or the other. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that's kind of what I'm saying about socially influence, the social constructs that influence your choices. Peer pressure. That's what I'm talking about.
What about the dissidents? The what do you call them? The people that just say the opposite for the sake of it. What are they called again? The contrarians.
That's still an exercise in free will, according to the social constructs. They're reacting against something that is already there.
So they're not exercising free will. They're choosing between choices that are preset to them.
No, they're choosing to not comply, so they do have free will.
Not when those are the two choices.
If you have two choices, you can, and you have the ability to choose one or the other, you have choice. That's free will. The ability, not having free will is not having the choice. That's how I understand it.
But you're going to go for the least objectionable one.
Not the least objectionable, the one that is against what everyone else is choosing. So you're judging it by what is around you, the social constructs, and you're actively choosing to go against society. That's what Stephen was saying, the contrarians.
And if there was an option 3,
Such as,
Well,
whatever.
my option 3 was just that it's sort of both. That it's even though you maybe you are the contrarian one day, but then maybe you what is it? Maybe you just go with the herd on another day, and it and I'm not a philosophy major, so I'm starting to feel I'm getting out of my depth here. But maybe let's bring it back to the story. Let's think of examples in the story where. Obviously, the nursery rhyme when he was thinking he could disrupt the loop by saying something random like a nursery rhyme, but he ends up what ends up happening? There was like someone confronts him, so he didn't have time to just blurt out the nursery rhyme. He's like, "Oh crap! No, I've got to do this." And
yeah, the phone rings as well.
yes, yeah, and then number one, Bob Wilson, number one, he gets it first, and then, but okay. Anyway, one thing I did like, I like the number of 30,000 years in the future, because that is so far that you're like, okay, I can't even imagine what it would be like, and the idea of some high ones or some alien people taking over the show seems very plausible, and so I buy it, and I'm kind of like, yep, you can do that. And whereas if you know how like you get these in Back to the Future where it goes, what year does it go to? Like 2012 or something? What?
Yeah.
Where does and so and then obviously we're way past it. It's like yeah, nah, that you didn't think that one through with your time travel because we didn't get there. At least Star Wars got the mobile phones right. But although was that in the past though? Actually, long time ago story. Never mind, never mind. All right, what what else? Dean, what was your favorite part, or in a part of the story that you thought was interesting?
Um, well, I mean, the fact that it started and ended in the exact same room kind of made me think back to the first Matrix movie, because that also starts and ends in the same room.
Mm.
It's kind of this. It kind of closes the loop. It kind of finality to it, which is also what annoyed me was because basically nothing happened.
Well, he told a story, but yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, there was no forward movement. It was just him in the room,
Mm.
and why he's in the room, because he's in the room, and he wants to be in the room.
Is that not enough for you?
It's a nice room, right?
Yeah, I don't know. So that is it's an interesting concept, which I enjoy, but it's also something that's quite frustrating when you get to the end of the book and you go, well, that was time well spent.
Don't say that. It was really well spent. Okay, let me.
There was no net movement. There's just your step, just this.
Yeah, there's a lot of repetition.
Okay, all right. Let's. Okay, what about Okay, so let's talk about dictator. So we find out that so he meets at the beginning of the story. He meets this old man, well, an older man, maybe in his 40s or something, that he thinks it is, and he when he goes through the portal and he sees the old man, and the old man's like, "You got to go back, and you got to do this. You got to do these things for me, and it's important, and he says it's worthwhile for you, as it is for him. It's mutual, right?" And so eventually we get to the point where the loop is created, and he goes and he thinks he's going to disrupt the loop by getting what is it? He's going to go and get the items that Dicta wants. He's got the shopping list of all the music and all the cultural things, and but then instead of going back to give it to Dicta, he goes to a time about 10 years. Is it 10 years before? Anything? And I like the anticipation that he's worried that Dicta's gonna come to like get him. That he's this um, authoritative person of time travel, and so, but when he goes back to this 10 years, then he finds humans that are docile, as you said, and primitive, and he's got all this culture, and they see him as their leader. I mean, for me, that was very interesting to sort of, to see, and then to find out that even though he was the king, basically, to these people, but it ages him because he's constantly working at managing these people and his kingdom, I guess you could call it, and then and then also he has the dictionary with the language from is it the aliens?
Notebook.
Yeah, the notebook. It's got this, and we find out that at the beginning of the story, it's got the notebook, but at the end you find out that he is the one who writes it, and
Yes, because he is Dicta.
yeah, but we don't know that until later, and so when he reads the definition of, is it leader or something, or chief? I think it's chief.
Yeah.
He finds that he wants this because the humans speak this different language in the future, and so he goes, okay, oh yeah, Dicta, I'm Dicta, and so he calls himself Dicta, and then even though it's only 10 years later that he would be Dicta, but he says that it ages him doubly because of being a leader, puts the stress on you. So don't be a president, is my advice to anyone. It'll age you 10 years, right? You see Obama, after like 4 years, you're like, oh, that guy's got all grey hair now. He was like one of the youngest. He was one of the youngest presidents.
They all are more aged when they finish their tenure.
Yeah, I mean, linearly they are definitely aged, but like in the story, it's
No,
sort of.
I meant as in the story. I wasn't being a smartass.
All right, but yeah, so there's that aspect of the story, and but to that point, so that's what happens in the story. But I think it raises some interesting a question about cause and effect, because on one hand, his future self comes to him, but his present self at the beginning of the story hasn't done. We believe that in cause and effect, you do something and then something happens, right? Like you do an action.
Well, it's self-fulfilling. Everything is self-fulfilling.
Which would tell us that there is no free will, if that's true, right? Because that means time is linear and not the butterfly effect, as you were suggested.
Yeah. So things are because things happened that made them what they are. So you'll have a sequence of events, and some of the causes of those events are caused by the earlier events.
So I'm going to go in the middle here, and I'm going to say I agree with Sarah that we have free will, but I'm very aware that there's a possibility that we may just be fulfilling some inevitable line of time that, I don't know. But
I
I
think on like a grander scheme, yeah, because humans, I mean, we're turning our home into an absolute trash pile. So there is an inevitability about the human race, in my opinion. But it's a very long scale. And there's inevitability when it comes to like certain people because you can have certain tendencies and certain personalities which make certain choices seem inevitable. Like, of course you chose that. Of course you went back to him. Of course you're opening a new bottle, whatever it may be. So I think, yes, arguably there is a certain sense of inevitableness, but I think it's, yeah, on a grander scale, maybe.
hmm, I think I'm gonna act as if we have free will, but concede that, we just. I like what you said, Dean. That we pretend that we have it. If it helps us sleep better at night. I mean, yeah, that's. I'll take that. What's it called? The blue pill. I'll take that blue pill. Yeah, fine, fine. Is it the blue
Yeah.
pill one where you just
Yeah, wasn't it the blue pill,
accept
the
it?
red pill? You wake up back in your bed and nothing's changed.
Now, blue pills, you go back to your bed and nothing's changed. You just accept. You just accept. This is your reality. Red pill is when you get what is it? You get the truth. You get to like see the world from the outside, or you get to see the matrix, right?
Yeah, you get to peek behind the curtain.
All right. Are we? How are we? With it? Is there anything else we wanna ram ram in talk about?
No, the loops were interesting, but ultimately they don't take you anywhere. It's like riding a rocking chair, keeps you busy, but you don't go anywhere.
Mm. So hopefully time travel doesn't happen. I'm kind of banking on that.
Well, not in this sense.
Well, in my lifetime, I don't want to. I don't want to find out that time travel is a thing, as I guess that would destroy my sense of free will. No, it would be one of those moments. You're like, oh, I'm having pickles tonight again. Don't know why. Just no free will. Just eat all the pickles.
Yeah, it's especially if you go back in time. It's not really free will because you've already made those decisions.
That's history. That's looking at. That's not the same as saying it's inevitable.
If you're going back, yes, because obviously it's already happened.
Oh, you mean physically, as if you time travel, you go
Yes,
back.
yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I
In
thought
the
you meant
time
you're
sense.
just thinking about what was done 50 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
no,
reading
just
the textbook.
yeah. No, no. In the sense of this time travel.
Oh, okay.
Okay, what did you think in the story? He uses the analogy of like a tissue, right? Like the tissue is a two-dimensional plane within this space, and then
With the threads and the dot and the
the dot is time, right? And then if you fold it over, then you can go from one time to another. And it's one of those. It's like the wormhole thing for traveling distances, which definitely makes me think that it's a bit bogus. It's an interesting abstract idea, but the fact that okay, well, we haven't done it. We know the idea and we haven't done it, so I kind of think that it's bogus.
Oh, there's wasn't it Hawking or someone said there are wormholes, but they're so imperceptibly small that they're of no use to us.
Well, that's dumb. I mean, he's a clever man, but it's like, I kind of feel like, I don't wanna dunk on Hawkins because he is retarded, but the
No, he's not. You
he's
don't dump on him because he's a freaking genius.
I know that's why it just sounds ridiculous, but what I mean is that if you say something that sounds so magical and go, but but you'll never be able to find out, so just forget about it.
It's because people constantly ask him if it's possible, and he says, well, this thing that you think that there is, yes, technically, arguably there is, but it's not usable in the form that you wish it to be. He was being incredibly rational about it and explaining and answering the questions he got all the friggin' time.
Mm.
He was
Well,
a scientist.
I'm gonna say the jury is still out on that one.
And can you imagine him having to explain that to some poppy little journalist, and he's just going, "Oh God, I don't have the energy for this."
Well, the journalist that talks to him.
He was explaining it to a group of people.
Yeah, the journalists that interview him tend to have like a scientific. They tend to have a background in science, so they can speak the lingo. I think it wouldn't be people like us.
A lot of the interviews he did were to all sorts of people, including children. He was incredibly accessible in terms of how he could converse with people and make it understandable to as close as a layman as he could get.
Well,
you can't hate on Hawking. Not to me.
I mean, I'm just gonna do it because I can, but
No.
he got to roll around a lot, so
Just being contrarian. Are you expressing free will at this moment?
maybe, or
Or what you think is your free will.
Yeah. Or are you reading a script?
and let me put this piece of paper down and what was that question?
Can we get the understudy in, please?
Do you wish to say nursery rhyme right now?
Whiskey
Blink
on
twice.
the wall. Who's the best
No,
of
no.
them all?
Okay, so free will, because you're doing what Bob Wilson couldn't do.
But then again, the problem with that was that maybe he was programmed that he was going to do that anyway. Oh, wait a minute, no. But I've got to be in a loop to that would only work in a loop, right? So if my future self came in, did something.
Maybe you are.
Well, it's all quite.
Are you even here, Steve?
Probably not, but that's a different question, a different story. Yes. All right, so
Scores?
let's move on. Let's move on to scores. Okay, so who's up first? Bring up my Excel.
I'll go first again. Because yeah, the story I still have the same issues as I began. And although I enjoyed the discussion, I enjoyed studying philosophy. This discussion didn't seem to add to the story this time, whereas usually it kind of adds a little bit more depth. Because in the story, he's so forthcoming with these big issues and these big questions. It wasn't like we were really discovering anything. It's more like we were just continuing the conversation that was already in the book, in the story. So yeah, it's still not my cup of tea. I still think that some fat could have been trimmed, that it could have been easier to read, and I still don't like him. So I'm going 187.
187. That is brutal.
I didn't enjoy it.
Well, let me get your score up here. Where is Tumty Tumty Tum? 187. Alright, Dean, you're up.
I'm gonna give it a flat 200.
200. We are in the meat grinder this week.
Are you gonna give it like $4.99 now and like bump up its average?
No, no, I'm gonna give it 500.
511.
Oh, yes. No, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed the story. So the payoff for such a convoluted thought experiment, which I guess is what it was. It One thing that I really like in stories is when it doesn't rely on exposition, and this book did that really well. And I agree that he the process of setting up the loop was tedious, and it takes away from the story. And I like the way he went about how to say, like, just even though it didn't disrupt the loop, but I like the way that he went about taking his own what do you call it, his own course within the story, even though the loop all, it revolves around itself and satiates itself to a conclusion. But yeah, I like that. And but at the same time, I agree he was not a likable character. And so the lesson is, if you see a time portal, don't go in it. Just don't do it. Finish your thesis, as he never did in the story. And I wish he had, but that's something else. So for me, this book man,
Be
it's
honest, it's okay.
it's I mean, it's an 8 out of 10, so it's a 400 for me. It's a flat 400. It's a very good story, and it just doesn't get higher because of the points that I laid out, and that's me. Yeah, as I said at the beginning of the discussion, I had a different take on the story. So with that said, let's move on to our score average. Let's take a look here. Yes, okay. Let me go. Where is our score average? At the top. Okay. So, thanks guys for discussing By His Bootstraps by Robert A. Heinlein. And today I learned that, and so Sarah, I did learn something. I learned that to say, by his bootstraps means something impossible, and it makes sense in this story because, I quite like the meanings of titles to the stories. So I like that now, and that helps. So let's see our score average for this week. Let's have some trumpets. 262. Like a 5 out of 10. Not bad, not bad. Let's see where it is on the table. Alright, so Burning Chrome is our top score at 435. Come down. It doesn't come closer. Nobody lives on Burden Street, which is 393. And let's see. Oh, it's below the Moral Virologist in Nightfall. And it is below Harrison Bergeron and above Axiomatic, the one about the murdering your wife's killer book. So there we go. There it is on our table in the bottom half, I reckon. There you have it. By His Bootstraps by Robert A. Heinlein. Do you guys know other stories by this guy?
No.
Have you seen the
The
movie?
zombie one?
Yes. Okay, so that's another time travel movie, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know the title.
I think it's called All the Zombies, or
yeah, something like that.
yeah. So it's another. It tackles the same what do you call it, theme of time travel and free will. But you guys know the movie was it Space Troopers?
Starship Troopers.
Starship Troopers. I got that wrong. Yeah, that's Heinlein. That's his story. Starship Troopers. He wrote that, and then I forget some Dutch guy made the movie.
I don't know.
Interesting.
It's one of my favorite movies. It's really good. It's a really good movie. They kill the insects, invading insects. So yeah, the Earth is a Mormon colonizing space fleet goes out and they get ravaged by some insect aliens, bugs. Yeah, and then the bugs start attacking Earth, and Starship Troopers they defend Earth from some bugs. It's pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Are you doing your bit? Do you kill cockroaches at your place?
No.
Alright. Alright.
But a good movie.
Yeah. Okay, so next week we're gonna read Dean's book. You're gonna recommend. Have you got one in mind, or are you gonna tell us tomorrow?
I'll tell you guys tomorrow.
Alright, we'll sleep on it, and I'll tell myself that I've got free will, because that'll make me feel better.
Okay. If you don't wake up tomorrow morning feeling better, just know that it wasn't your choice.
Or was it? See, you just gotta act like you do. I don't know.
Fake it till you make it.
Until you... Yeah. Okay. Alright. See you guys.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Goodbye.